How's it going, internets? I hope you're having a lovely day. It's that time again. Time to get into some animation. Time to get that imagination all cranked up. Get into some creativity, and it's time to get inspired. And today's inspiration comes from Manuel Arenas. I'm hoping I'm saying that right. Let me know, comments down below. He is a wonderful, wonderful artist. I really love his style. It's so unique. He's got this blend of almost like a watercolor style with a rough, kind of almost like a grease pencil line, but just such a wonderful imagination. I really love everything that he does. I feel like there's such a softness and such a wild, otherworldly feel to all of his work. Probably most known for the stuff with Gruffalo, I believe he worked on. But yeah, just the way that he lays out his composition, his characters. I really love that in something like this, he really simplifies the eyes over here from the far away perspective, and then does more detail as you get closer up. I think that's really interesting, rather than doing, it's almost like a style shift in between those two, and that's really interesting. This was one of my favorites. I just love the amount of detail and the twigs and the crows and the birds that are flying through that hair. I thought that's such a really, really creative idea. Again, a wonderful grasp of anatomy, and then he kind of tweaks it to almost be like a hint of kind of cartoony, but then a little bit of realism as well mixed in there. And gorgeous color, gorgeous color. A little tribute to, I threw this one in just because I'm a huge fan of Mobius, Jean Girard. A little tribute to that, and anyone who's a fan of his is definitely high up in my book. I really like this one. I like the way that he set up the hands. I thought those were really interesting hand poses, and I think that the kind of variation in the lengths of the fingers is really interesting for like a tree spirit. I'll have to kind of remember something like that next time I'm doing something similar, because I think that's, you typically think, well, you just keep them all same, but doing the kind of longer and shorter ones, that's interesting. This kind of crow spirit that he has is a really, really unique design, and I really love that one too. And the rabbits behind here, really well done. There's a simplicity, yet a bit of complexity in the anatomy still in there too. Just wonderful stuff. So definitely check out more from him. I think this one's one of my favorites, and this one for sure. Really love just the feel of it. For sure, it's got a really softness to the piece as well. But I did want to share a quote with you guys that I was able to find from him, and I believe this one's a translation, so bear with me. It might not be 100% word for word, but he said, "The engine of my work is the inspiration. The yield is random, and I have no problem taking things as they come." I thought there's some really good meat in there that, try to find good inspiration. For me, I try at least, I definitely share stuff with you guys, but also just in my own stuff, I try to read a couple passages in books that I love, or, try and find new visual imagery that's different than I'm used to, and see what I like about it, or what I want to change, or what I would tweak about it, and just try to keep my brain going with new visual and kind of mental idea stimulation as well. And then I think this one part where he says the yield is random, I think that's true, because I think after you get past a certain point in your creative journey, you kind of just throw all of this stuff into a pot and then see what comes out. So it's not, even though you might have an idea of how you want it to be, you tend to think there's always that little bit that you hadn't really discovered until you get down and start working on the project. And the last part, I think, is just a great encouragement to try and get in the mindset of just able to overcome problems whenever they arise. But I'm getting rambly, so let's get into some animation. This is the Ferret rig. It's a free rig you can grab over at davidoreilly.com from his External World collection of rigs. I'll throw a link in the description below to all the stuff we've talked about so far. And if you're not familiar with what we'll be doing for the rest of the video, give ourselves 48 frames, give or take. I go off and I find a rig that I've never used before. It's a free resource for you guys to play around with as well, and we kind of go from there. A little bit of talking through the process, a little bit of just hanging out with me while I animate. But most of all, the main purpose of doing these each and every day is to hopefully encourage you guys and inspire you to go off and create your own unique worlds and creations for whatever medium it is that you're passionate about, that you just take another step in your journey towards growth and mastery, and just an extra little dose of motivation, because I believe in you and you can do it. You are the creative future. So let's go ahead and start playing around here. So I was thinking, if I can get that one, we'd kind of keep this vanilla, but just play up the head there, because there's a lot of ways that we could tweak this thing, but I think playing with the head and keeping the rest of this set up a little more subtly would be a good good thing to play around with. I think we'll see. That's kind of the idea that I had going forward, and I think we'll do quicker steps, so probably on 10s or 5s. Seems like this should be a little bit faster, so let's try. And I think we're just going to do a cycle for today as well. And let's rotate the feet out a little bit. Maybe we'll bend the arms up here too. And let's zero that out. And zero that out. Y, then we'll drag it down. Maybe we need to go the other way. Rotate that over. Just want to create a more interesting pose if we can to start with. Pull the tail up a little bit higher. Alright, let's start there. I'm sure we'll mix stuff up a little bit more, but give us a place to start here. Go ahead and save our file. We are using Autodesk Maya 2014 for today's video. For more information on that, check out all the links in the description below. Wonderful program. Really should try it out. And let's do a little bit of puff in the chest here too. So pull that and pull that back here. Alright, so let's set our frame range. We're just going to do, I think, 50 frames then, since we're doing this on 10s, a little bit quicker than 48. And we'll go ahead and set our first key here, and let's start building this guy. Kind of nice. I haven't done just kind of a bipedal walk cycle for a little while, so this should be fun to play with. And we'll just vary between these two. And do we need to go 60 frames here? Yeah, 60 frames for it to loop, not 50. We can either go 40 or 60, but let's go 60. Okay, felt like you'd be doing quicker steps. Let's go there, copy that one, kind of mimic where that is, move it back there, delete that one, and we'll just kind of flick between these two main keys here, middle mouse button them over and hit S on our keyboard to lock them in, and let's see. And I guess we didn't lock that one back in. See if that's working okay. Alright, and let's look at apps. Start building that. Go a little bit down, a little bit up, a little bit down, a little bit up, a little bit down. I'll clean that up in a second here. And then back to where we started. Let's see. Alright, feels alright. Let's just balance it out a little bit more. So look at our window, animation editors, graph editor, look at our translate Ys. And like I I said, let's just balance those out a little bit more. Doesn't have to be exact, but just so we don't get any of those big outliers here. Let's see how that works. Okay. Alright. Feeling like a fairly good start to this one. So let's go ahead and save our file here. Let's get our passing positions in. But before we do that, we're just going to go back to all of the main keys here that we have. We're going to hit S on our keyboard here so we make sure we lock in all of the attributes there. So it's not just the translate Z that we have a key on, but we have everything. So when we go in and put our passing positions, the foot will stay planted when we want it to plant and raised up when we want it down. Okay, and lift it up there, and lift it up here. And let's see that now. Probably a little too high, but we'll add a little bit of drag in the foot and everything, so we'll leave it a little bit higher right now, and we can lower it if we want to. And raise it up there. And let's go ahead and see this now. Okay, first of all, let's go ahead and balance out the translate Y's here so we don't have any really high steps or really low steps, but they're all around the same height. Again, doesn't have to be exact, but somewhere in the vicinity of each other. Let's go ahead and see that now. Still think they're a little too high, but I'm not going to worry about it for right now. So let's add a little bit of drag here at 3. Lift it up at 8 and plant it down. Drag here at 3, lift it up a couple frames before. So 3 frames in, we drag it, 2 frames, lift it up. So that way it'll feel like it's more of a precise landing on the foot. Okay, and let's look here. Drag it 3 frames in, 2 frames before, we'll lift it up. And more so than when we normally just kind of drag, by lifting it up before it even gets to the contact with the heel, makes it feel like it's a more purposeful step, like you're actually putting effort into lifting it up and putting it down. And let's look at the rotate X's here, and let's try and balance those out fairly even there too. Okay. Again, doesn't have to be exact, but somewhere in the same vicinity here. And let's see how that feels. Okay, and then let's look at the toe. So we'll go here and we'll drag that toe down there. On the heel contacts, we'll lift it up, give it 2 frames, and we'll flatten it out. Okay, and we'll drag it down there, lift it up here, 2 frames, and we'll flatten it out. So that way the heel will go first, and then we'll have the toe a couple of frames later. Just break up that step a little bit more. And let's see that now. Okay, and let's look at this side. And in the middle here, we'll drag the toe down there, lift it up here, go 2 frames, and we'll flat it out. Drag the toe down there, lift it up here, 2 frames, and we'll flat it out. And then we'll drag the toe down there, lift it up here, and we'll mimic that frame back again, and I'm actually going to go 3 frames and flat it out there, just because it should make that transition for the loop cycle a little bit better. Okay, it feels pretty good right now, so let's get back into the hips here. Now I'm going to do just a teeny bit of translate X here over the planted foot, so we get a little bit of weight shifts. I don't want too much though. I kind of like it being having a little bit of rigidity. The right word? Rigidness. Rigidity. And let's balance that out as well. just so it's fairly even from the left side to the right side. We're not favoring one side over the other, which you'd want to do if you had like a bum leg or a really strong leg for some reason. Okay, maybe a little bit less. Let's cut that down by about 25%. There we go. And now let's do a little bit of rotate to favor the planted foot here. So we're gonna rotate into that leg, into that one, into this one, into that one, into this one, and we'll probably tone this down. We're definitely gonna offset it with the chest as well. Let's see how that feels now. Okay, and let's look at the rotate Y, and again we're gonna try and balance that out, because as you can see we're definitely favoring where we started versus where we're going to. A little more heavy on this side, so we want to make sure that's a little more balanced out. So we've got about 7 or 8 value there, so I'll bring it to negative there, and let's see how that feels. Alright, then let's look at the chest here, and let's do a little bit of rotate. I guess it's going to be X here to give a little bit of twist there. And again, this is probably too much. I'll definitely scale it back, but let's see how it's feeling. Alright, not too bad. And let's clean it up again. Make sure we've got a good balance from left to right here. A little bit better than we did on the hips. And let's see, should we scale it down a little bit more? Yeah, it feels a little too much. But it might be too much on both the hips and the chest as well. So I'm gonna cut it down. Like I said, I kind of like the feeling of it being a little bit neutral. So it's not too over exaggerated on any parts really. So I'll just scale it back a little bit more. Let's keep looking at this guy. Just keep tweaking until it feels right. Alright, and let's do just a teeny bit of a rotate Z here. Gonna go a long way with this character for sure. Just want to do a hint of it there. And then back again. Okay, so let's look there. Again, we really don't want to do too much of there, but a little bit of it will just help loosen up that hip a little bit more. So let's see how it feels now. Let's do a little bit on the chest as well. Like I said, just a teeny bit. And this is one that we're probably going to have to pull back in the graph editor because it's kind of sensitive here. Because we don't want it to tip and sway, really. We just want a little give there. Alright, and let's look there. So we're really going to scale this back. And probably is going to even need to be more than what we have right now. So let's look at it now and see how we're doing. A little bit more. Scale it back. Okay. And let's focus this in so we can balance it out a little bit more. Just hitting F on our keyboard, bring that a little bit closer here. See that now. I feel like I need to do a little bit with the neck here. So let's see. Let's grab both portions of the neck here. Do a little bit of rotate. X there. Offset the movement of the chest with the neck a little bit. sure this isn't right yet, but let's see. It's not too bad. Okay. And let's clean that up. Let's rotate X. Keep thinking just Y, but the world orientation of this rig is a little funky. It's kind of weird that the rotate X on the hips is the rotate Y in the chest. I wonder what the thinking was behind that. Great rig otherwise. Really like the aesthetics of the David O'Reilly rig. I think they're very fun. Alright, do we need to do a little bit more? Feels like it's a little more tilty than it was before. There we go. Let's look at the tail. Up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Do a little bit of bounce here. And then back again. Alright, let's balance that out. Scale it back a little bit because we're going to break it up with the movement of the rest of the tail here as well. So I'll scale it back for now. Maybe we'll want to amp it up again after we get the rest working. But for now, I think that's fine. Alright, and let's look at this one. And let's do it at 3. Go back. And then forward. Break up the tip of the tail once we're done here. Let's see. All right. Let's scale it back a little bit more. And it's funny. Originally, I was thinking I wanted to play up the neck, but I think I'm going to exaggerate it the other way by keeping it really stiff. You know, you can always exaggeration doesn't always mean over the top. Exaggeration can mean, you know, exaggerate how small things are, how minimalistic you want to keep something to. People always think that talking about exaggeration in animation is always you know, Woody Woodpecker or Bugs Bunny, but a lot of times exaggeration is, you know, the nostril flares on a giant, you know, mythical creature rig or something, where you're just looking in there and you're just bringing something to the attention of the audience by either exaggerating it through making it really noticeable, or making everything else normal and that really unnoticeable, which is going to cause the eye to be drawn to it as well. Okay, and let's do a little bit of swing in the arms now, just a teeny bit. I feel like that's about right for the amount of movement. Let's just balance it out. Let's see. And let's break up the elbow a little bit. The forearm. Just loosen it just a bit. Too much. want to keep the stiffness of this arm, but I also want to, recognize that it is a joint that would be affected by the movement of the other one. Let's go somewhere like this. So we have a little bit of give in there, but not nearly, as much as we had to begin with. A little bit out, a little bit back, a little bit out, a little bit back, out, back, and back to where we started. Let's see. That feels pretty good, actually. I am just gonna balance it out a little bit more. Let's see. Okay, and let's look at the other arm. We're going to do pretty close to the same thing that we did here. So a little bit forward, a little bit back, a little bit forward, a little bit back, forward, and back. Let's see. Feels like we didn't balance it out very well. So let's start off a little bit more like that. Okay, should be something more like that. Let's see. I think the backs need to go further a little bit more. Let's see. The forward seem like they're a little too far forward, so let's pull it back. Okay, and let's look at this guy. Okay, sorry about that. Let's look here. We want to loosen up this arm. So a little bit forward, a little bit back, a little bit forward, a little bit back, a little bit forward, a little bit back, and back to where we started. Too much up. Okay. So let's balance this guy out. I feel like the amount of movement is kind of close, but it's just too much forward. So we want to just universally push it forward a little bit. Nah, that feels like too much down. Okay, so let's shrink down the overall movement and push it back a little bit. I think I'm going the wrong way. Let's invert it. That's probably what's wrong with it. Yeah, let's push it universally down a little bit more. Maybe a little more movement overall. Let's look at the wrist. I feel like it's okay. It's not that great here. Out there, in here, out there, and then back again. Feels like it needs to go a little bit higher up here. Let's see that now. Perfect. I think I want a little bit less hand movement and a little more forearm. feels okay, but the hand still feels a little over exaggerated, so I'll just scale it back probably about 5% or so. Alright, it feels alright. Okay, so let's go ahead and save our file. Now let's see if we can do a little bit of compression and stretch out in the chest. So it's going to go forward there, back here, forward there, back here, forward there, back here, forward. And we're going to offset that in the chest here. And I need to clean that up. I think I went the wrong way on one of those. So let's see. Yeah, see this one? I knew that one was going to be janky. So I want to keep this pretty tight. Tighter than most of the rest of what I've been doing. So I'm going to look at the values here and really try to lock them in pretty close to each other. Doesn't have to be exact, but don't really want too much variation in here. So. Like I said, when I'm doing this, I kind of find an arbitrary line like this one up top at the 12.2 and try and make everything kind of feel pretty much like there's an invisible line going across there. Okay, now I want to take the chest and pull it back here, forward there, back here, forward there, back here, forward there. And this obviously feels like it's a little too much right now, so we'll scale it back and balance it out here as well, and then loop back into what we originally started with. So let's look at all of our rotate Y's now. And let's clean those up. In a little tighter. And balance out these guys. And then if we need to exaggerate or pull back, we've got everything pretty balanced here, so you can see if that feels right. Yeah, it feels pretty good. We've got a little bit of looseness then, so that the back doesn't feel so rigid. We can get a little bit of bend in there. Let's look at the head here. How do we want to play this? Maybe we could go a little bit of rotate down there, and a little bit up, a little bit down, just so we can loosen the head up a little bit more. We'll see. Might have to invert it. Just want a little bit of bobble on the top of the head there. And then back into where we started. Now let's clean that up before I play it and see what I think. And obviously I don't want a lot of this, just a little bit of looseness in there. And I'm doing a little bit different timing because we did everything on 5s when we were doing the kind of compression in the chest. And this is going to kind of off play from that stuff, so we can pick a different timing there. Let's see. Feels like probably a little too much down, so let's scale everything back, but I think that movement should work. Okay, well, let's scale back to about half of that. Let's see. Maybe a little bit more. let's go ahead and save that. I think there was a blink. Let's go ahead and do a blink on here. I'll pop it back open. And go here, key that one. Keep it shut for a couple of frames. Keep that. Overshoot it. Overshoot it. Keep that and key that guy. Okay. And this is just, it tends to be how I personally do blinks. And I'll delete a couple frames. So we've got pretty much just a little bit of movement there. Then we overshoot higher, which we might need to exaggerate a little bit more. A little bit wider eye. Wider eye, then close, hold for what, 2 frames, 3 frames. Overshoot, bigger eye, and then pull back. See that little bit of bounciness to it. Alright, and let's look at the mouth. Maybe we'll do a little bit of mouth on here. It's not really a jaw though, it's more of a... But let's see if we can still work with it. I'm probably just going to have to really minimize it. We're going every 5 frames here as well, just so we can hopefully get some looseness in that jaw. Like I said, it's a sensitive controller, so it's really over-exaggerated right now, but we'll pull it back. And if we don't like it, we can always get rid of it, but let's see. So we'll go just a little bit. And let's see. See, just so that we get that little bit of give in the jaw. It feels well. Now, is there a controller for this little bell? That would be kind of fun. It doesn't appear like there is. Alright. So the last thing I wanted to do was just do a little bit of fingers. So go ahead and start there. And we'll rotate them out a little bit. And in. Out. And this is probably way over exaggerated, so we can scale it back. We're just putting kind of a rough pass here and there. Let's see. It's already just before we even bothered playing it, cut it about in half. Let's see that. Alright, that feels fine. Now let's just take tips really and delay the frame. Okay, and let's look at the other side and we'll do something similar. And I think there's a thumb controller, so we'll get into that. And that'll probably wrap it up for the bulk of what we're doing for today. So scaling. And then out. Go back. Out. Back. Out. And then back into our original. Let's see. Alright, and we'll minimize that movement a little bit more. Let's see how it feels. You know what, now that I'm looking at it, I want to push this one so it goes a little bit further out. Maybe I'll just universally crank it higher there. Okay, and let's look at tip. We'll delay at a frame. Now let's look at the thumb. this at a different timing than we did on the fingers. And back again. I think I'm going to go the opposite way from what I did. Keep for this hand for some reason. I keep approaching it the opposite way of the way I want to. It's funny. This one I tend to not need to invert anything. The other one I keep doing it all the other way. So a little bit further out there, and in there, out there. And it's not a big control or anything, but just something else that we can add that should hopefully loosen up that thumb and those hand poses a little bit more by giving them different timing. I think that'll do it for today. That's working alright. We could definitely spend another hour or so, clean up everything, push it a little bit further, but I think we got something that works. So let's go ahead and look back at where we started. We look at the beautiful work of Manuel Arenas, and I'm probably saying that wrong. Like I said, comments down below. Wonderful artist, amazing stuff. I love his work. But he said the engine of my work is the inspiration. The yield is random, and I had no problem taking things as they come. And I wanted to kind of mention one more thing that I was kind of dwelling on while we were working. Is it kind of brings back to that point of where it says the yield is random. You got to be careful what you're putting in as your inspiration. Make sure it's things that you want to have in your subconscious or in the back of your mind that you can pull upon when you're working. So try and find people whose work that you really love, or whose message that you really love, or something that let's say the word resonates or really speaks to you, and try to do that, and stay away from things that are negatively impact you for whatever that might mean to you in particular. But just try and fill your life with the things that you want to express outwardly as well. So I think that'll wrap it up. I love you guys lots. I hope you took another step in your journey towards mastering whatever medium it is that you're passionate about. Thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for all the likes and subscribes. And I think that'll wrap it up for today. So we will see you for some more animation tomorrow.